Something extraordinary is happening right now, and most people have no idea what it is. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, doesn't issue direct threats lightly. That man has spent decades carefully crafting every word that comes out of his office, because he understands perhaps better than any other leader alive today that in the Middle East, words are weapons. So when Khamenei steps forward and issues what can only be described as a pointed, deliberate military threat, at the exact same moment that satellite imagery and multiple intelligence sources are confirming massive Iranian troop and equipment movements across the region, you are not looking at a bluff. You are not looking at political theatre. You are looking at a strategic signal, one that every serious analyst in Washington, London, Tel Aviv, and Moscow is reading very carefully right now. The question is not whether Iran is prepared to act. The question, the far more consequential, is what exactly they are prepared to act upon and whether the current global power structure is remotely ready for what comes next. Let me begin by giving you the full picture, because what is unfolding right now with Iran is not something you can understand by reading a single headline or watching a 2-minute news segment. This situation has layers, it has history, it has context that goes back decades, and if you strip all of that away, you are left with nothing but noise. So let us take this carefully and let us take this seriously, because it deserves both. Khamenei has been in power since 1989. Think about that for a moment. This is a man who has outlasted the Soviet Union. He has outlasted multiple American presidencies, Republican and Democrat alike. He has watched sanctions come and go. He has watched Iran be isolated, pressured, threatened. And yet here he is, still standing, still leading, still issuing statements that make the entire region hold its breath. That kind of longevity does not happen by accident. It happens because this man is, whatever you may think of him politically or morally, an extraordinarily patient and calculating strategic actor. And patient, calculating strategic actors do not issue threats without reason. They do not move military assets without purpose. Every move is deliberate. Every word is weighed. So, when both of those things happen simultaneously, the threat and the military movement, you must sit up and pay attention. Now, what exactly has been revealed? Let us go through this properly. Iranian military movements, and we are talking about significant movements here, not minor repositioning, have been observed and confirmed across multiple fronts. We are seeing movement in western Iran near the Iraqi border. We are seeing activity in southern Iran near the Strait of Hormuz, and we are seeing communications and coordination between Iran and its network of regional proxies that suggests something is being prepared, or at minimum, something is being signaled very deliberately to adversaries who are watching. The Iranians know they are being watched. They have always known this. American satellites, Israeli intelligence, British signals intelligence. Iran operates under constant surveillance, which means when Iran allows these movements to be visible, when they do not go to extraordinary lengths to conceal what they are doing, it is because they want the movements to be seen. That is the signal. That is the message being sent, without a single additional word needing to be spoken. And then Khomeini speaks, and the words he chooses are not vague. They are not the kind of routine theological or political commentary that comes out of Tehran on a regular basis. These are words directed at specific actors, addressing specific situations, with a specific warning attached. Now, I want to be careful here because I do not want to overstate this or understate it. What Khamenei is doing is what strategists call escalation management, but he is doing it in a way that simultaneously escalates and warns. He is saying essentially, we are watching, we are ready, and there will be consequences. The consequences are not spelled out in clinical detail, but they do not need to be. Everyone in the region knows what Iranian consequences look like because they have seen them before. Let us talk about the regional context, because this does not exist in a vacuum. We are living through a period of extraordinary geopolitical realignment. The Abraham Accords changed the surface-level diplomatic architecture of the Middle East. Saudi Arabia's conversations with Israel, paused, complicated but not dead, represent a fundamental shift in how Arab states are orienting themselves. And Iran has watched all of this with deep, serious concern. Because what Iran sees is not peace. What Iran sees is encirclement. What Iran sees is a coalition being constructed slowly, imperfectly, with many contradictions, but constructed nonetheless with American backing, that is designed to contain Iranian power and Iranian influence across the region. And from Iran's perspective, that is an existential concern, not a political inconvenience, an existential concern. This is where many Western analysts make a critical error. They look at Iran's behavior, the proxy networks, the missile programs, the nuclear ambiguity, and they interpret it as aggression, as expansionism, as the behavior of a rogue state that simply wants to cause chaos. But if you sit where Tehran sits, if you look at the map, the way Iranian strategic planners look at the map, the picture looks entirely different. You see American military bases surrounding you. You see a hostile Israel with nuclear weapons to your west. You see Gulf states that have been arming themselves with American weapons for decades to your south. You see the memory of the Iran-Iraq war, in which the West backed Saddam Hussein and Iran lost hundreds of thousands of people. You see a country that has been under crippling economic sanctions for the better part of 4 decades. When you see all of that, the decisions Iran makes, however troubling they may appear from the outside, begin to have a strategic logic that is deeply rooted in genuine security concerns. I am not defending those decisions. I am explaining them, and explanation is not the same as justification. But you cannot understand this crisis. You cannot understand any crisis without understanding the perspective of all the parties involved. Now, let us talk about what is happening with Iran's nuclear program, because this is inseparable from everything else. The JCPOA, the nuclear deal negotiated under Obama, abandoned by Trump, and never successfully revived under Biden, left Iran in a position of significant nuclear advancement. Iran is now enriching uranium at levels that are, technically speaking, not far from weapons grade. The IAEA has flagged this repeatedly. The warnings have been consistent. And what has been the Western response? Diplomatic statements, expressions of concern, meetings that produce nothing concrete. Iran has watched this, and Iran has drawn a very specific conclusion from it, that the diplomatic pathway, at least in its current form, offers Iran very little. It offers Iran continued sanctions, continued pressure, continued demands, with very limited relief in return, and so Iran continues to advance, not necessarily toward a weapon. That final decision has not been made, at least not as far as we know, but toward a position of such nuclear capability that any potential adversary has to factor it into their calculations. That is leverage, that is deterrence, that is Iran playing a very long and very sophisticated strategic game. And here is where the military movements become even more significant, because what Iran is demonstrating simultaneously is that it does not need a nuclear weapon to create serious problems for anyone who decides to act militarily against it. Iran's conventional deterrence capability is genuinely formidable. Its missile arsenal, and we are talking about a missile arsenal that has been built up over many years with significant technical sophistication, can reach Israel, can reach American bases in the Gulf, can reach Saudi oil infrastructure. The Houthi operations in Yemen, whatever you think of them, have demonstrated something very important, that Iran's extended network of partners and proxies can project force across enormous distances and disrupt global shipping in ways that have real economic consequences. The Red Sea situation has not been resolved. It is ongoing, and it is costing the global economy billions of dollars in rerouted shipping, in insurance costs, in delays. That is Iranian power being demonstrated in real time, even without Iran firing a single missile directly. So when you put all of this together, the nuclear advancement, the proxy network, the missile capability, the military movements, and now this direct public statement from Khamenei, what you have is Iran making a very comprehensive strategic communication to multiple audiences at once. To Israel, the message is any military action against Iran will have consequences you are not prepared for. To the United States, the message is we are not Iraq in 2003, we are not Libya in 2011, we have capabilities and we have partners and we have the willingness to use both. To the Gulf states, the message is your normalization with Israel, your alignment with American strategy comes with risks that you should consider very carefully. And to the Iranian domestic audience, because Khamenei is always speaking to his own people as well, the message is we are strong, we are not afraid, and we will defend this country. Now, where does this leave the United States? Because America is, whether it wants to be or not, at the very center of this situation. American policy toward Iran has been, frankly, inconsistent for decades. Every administration comes in with a different approach. Obama tried engagement and got the JCPOA. Trump tore it up and imposed maximum pressure, which did not produce the regime collapse or the capitulation that was hoped for. It produced Iranian nuclear advancement and regional escalation. Biden tried to revive the deal and failed, and now, with a new political configuration in Washington, the question of what American Iran policy actually is remains genuinely unclear. That uncertainty is dangerous, not just for the United States, but for everyone in the region, because when American policy is unclear, every actor in the region makes their own calculations about what America will or will not do, and those calculations are frequently wrong in ways that lead to catastrophic miscalculation. Israel is, of course, a central actor here, and Israeli decision-making right now is under enormous pressure. The Israeli military and intelligence establishment is watching Iranian nuclear advancement with genuine alarm. The debate inside Israel about whether and when to strike Iranian nuclear facilities is not an abstract policy discussion. It is an active, ongoing, serious strategic conversation at the highest levels of the Israeli government. And the Israelis understand that any strike on Iran would not be a clean surgical operation. Iran has dispersed and hardened its nuclear facilities specifically to make them difficult to destroy. A strike would likely be only partially successful and would trigger a massive Iranian response, not just from Iran directly, but from Hezbollah in Lebanon, from militias in Iraq and Syria, from the Houthis in Yemen. Israel would face a multi-front conflict of enormous intensity. That is a deterrent. That is precisely what Iran has constructed it to be. The global economic dimension of all of this is something that I think does not get nearly enough attention. The Strait of Hormuz, that narrow waterway at the bottom of the Persian Gulf, carries somewhere between 20 and 30% of the world's oil supply. If that strait is threatened, if it is disrupted, if Iran takes action to restrict passage through it, the economic consequences for the entire world are severe and immediate. Oil prices spike, energy costs rise, inflation, which the global economy has been struggling to bring under control, gets worse. Supply chains, which are already fragile after years of disruption, face additional stress. This is not a regional problem, this is a global problem, and Iran knows it. And the major economies of the world, the United States, Europe, China, India, all have enormous stakes in what happens in that strait. China, in particular, which gets a significant portion of its oil from the Gulf, is watching this very carefully. India, which has been walking a diplomatic tightrope between Iran and the West, is watching. Russia, which has been deepening its relationship with Iran through the war in Ukraine and shared interest in undermining Western-led order, is watching. This is truly a global story dressed in regional clothing. Let me say something about the moral dimension of this because I think it matters and I think it is often avoided in these kinds of analytical discussions. The people who suffer most in these geopolitical confrontations are never the leaders who make the decisions. They are the ordinary people, Iranian civilians living under sanctions, unable to access basic medicines, struggling with an economy that has been devastated by decades of economic pressure. They are the people in Yemen who have suffered catastrophic humanitarian consequences from a war that great powers have used as a proxy battleground. They are the people in Lebanon whose country has been essentially destroyed by the combination of domestic dysfunction and its position as a front line in the Iran-Israel confrontation. The geopolitical chess game being played at the highest levels has human consequences at the lowest levels that are staggering in their scale and their suffering. And I think any serious analysis of this situation has to hold that reality in mind, not as a sentimental afterthought, but as a central moral fact that should shape how we think about what kind of resolution we actually want to see here. What does resolution look like? This is the hardest question. And I want to be honest with you, I do not think anyone has a convincing answer right now. The diplomatic pathways that have been tried have not worked. The pressure campaign has not produced Iranian capitulation. Military action would likely produce catastrophic consequences that would make the current situation look manageable by comparison. And the status quo, this grinding, dangerous, expensive, morally costly standoff, is not sustainable indefinitely. Something has to give. The question is what gives and how, and at what cost, and who pays that cost. These are not comfortable questions, but they are the real questions, and they deserve real engagement, rather than the kind of triumphalist or alarmist narratives that tend to dominate the conversation on both sides. What I am watching for, and what I think you should be watching for in the coming days and weeks, is whether these military movements are accompanied by any back-channel diplomatic activity, because in my experience of how these situations develop, the public posturing and the private conversations are often running on entirely separate tracks simultaneously. Khamenei issues a public threat. Meanwhile, somewhere through intermediaries, perhaps Qatar, perhaps Oman, both of which have historically served as back channels between Tehran and Washington, conversations may be happening that are completely invisible to the public. That is how these things often work. The public drama is real, but it is also partly theatre designed to create negotiating leverage. The real question is what is happening behind the curtain. And that ultimately is what makes this so difficult to analyse in real time and so important to follow carefully. We are watching a situation that could resolve diplomatically, that could escalate militarily, or that could continue in this dangerous grinding state of managed tension that satisfies no one and costs everyone. Iran's supreme leader has issued his warning. The military movements have been revealed, the world is watching, and the next move, whoever makes it, whatever form it takes, will matter enormously for the stability of the Middle East, for global energy markets, for American strategic credibility, and for the millions of ordinary human beings who live inside this crisis every single day of their lives.